The rain had a particular smell in this part of the city. Damp concrete, diesel fumes, the faint tang of garbage from across the street. It was 11:47 p.m., and my shift at St. Agnes Hospital had just ended. Every step toward my apartment was agony. My cheap scrubs were soaked through, my bag cut into my shoulder, and all I could think about was getting home to Leo. My son, 4 years old. I slept at Mrs. Gable's apartment next door while I worked the night shift. The money was never enough. Medical bills from his asthma, the predatory loan I'd taken out when he was hospitalized, the rent that kept climbing. I'd signed papers I didn't understand with men in nice suits who had dead eyes. Their boss was Kieran Vass, and he was the reason I looked over my shoulder every night. I turned the corner onto my street and froze. A black car sat idling in front of my building. Not one of Kieran's flashy chrome-trimmed vehicles. This was different. A rolling shadow, sleek and silent as a shark. Every instinct screamed to run, but Leo was upstairs. My feet kept moving forward out of pure dread. The rear window glided down without a sound. The interior was a pool of darkness, but I could see the outline of a man, the sharp line of a jaw, broad shoulders filling the space. And then I smelled it. Sandalwood. Rich, spicy, impossibly expensive sandalwood, and underneath it, the clean bite of aged scotch. My world swayed. I hadn't smelled that scent in 5 years. Not since I signed divorce papers with numb hands. Not since I walked out of a penthouse carrying a secret in my womb and a shattered heart. The man spoke. His voice was lower than I remembered, worn by time and power, but it vibrated through the rain and into my bones. "Get in the car, Elira." Not a question. A command. The same command that once made my knees weak with desire. Now it made them weak with terror. I stood there, rainwater streaming down my face, a statue of exhaustion and shock. "Now," he said, a silken threat, because I had a son sleeping upstairs, because men like him didn't make requests, because my life was as fragile as a soap bubble. I reached for the door handle. The metal burned with cold. I pulled it open, and the scent of Nicholas, my ex-husband, the most dangerous man I'd ever known, bathed me. I slid into the leather seat. The door closed with a soft final thud. I was instantly aware of my wretchedness, the damp scrubs soaking into pristine upholstery, the smell of hospital antiseptic invading his space. He was a shadow outlined by the window as the car pulled away, smooth and silent. I stared at my hands, clenched in my lap, fingers pale. The silence was thick and choking, threaded through with his scent. It was the same yet different, deeper, more potent. Like the sandalwood had been steeped in 5 years of authority and violence. "Look at me." My body obeyed before my mind could protest. The passing streetlights painted his face in strobes of gold and shadow. Time had been cruel and kind. New lines at the corners of his eyes, a more complex set to his mouth. His hair still ink black, swept back from a granite forehead. But his eyes. God, his eyes. Stormy gray, fixed on me with an intensity that stole the air from my lungs. They raked over me, missing nothing. The fatigue, the faded scrubs, the trembling I couldn't control. "You're working as a nurse." He knew, of course he knew. "It's a good job," I said, my voice husky and strained, a flash in his eyes. "You live in a building that's one strong breeze from collapsing. You owe a significant sum to Kieran Vass. You work the night shift and leave your child with an elderly neighbor." Each statement was a precise clinical cut. He'd dissected my life, laid it bare. "How dare you?" I whispered, fury surprising me. "You have no right." "I have every right," he interrupted, his voice sinking to dangerous velvet. "The moment you entangle yourself with a parasite like Vass, you step back into my world. My world has rules, Alara, and you're currently breaking several by being so accessible. I didn't have a choice. Leo was sick. He needed medicine, treatment. The loan was the only way. At the mention of Leo's name, a change occurred. A sudden, terrifying stillness descended. It wasn't calm. It was the stillness of a predator catching a new scent. His eyes pinned me down with pinpoint focus. The gray seemed to darken, to churn. Leo, he repeated, testing the weight of it. How old is he, Ilara? The world narrowed to this question. I could see the numbers clicking behind his eyes. 5 years since the divorce. A child named Leo. A secret I carried when I left. The math was simple and brutal. My silence screamed louder than any words. A muscle ticked in his jaw. I saw the crack in his marble facade. Not vulnerability, but rage so overwhelming it was almost beautiful. His hand curled into a fist so tight the leather of his gloves creaked. You kept my son from me. He's my son, I fired back, maternal instinct roaring to life. You signed away any claim. You wanted me gone. I was gone. This has nothing to do with you. He laughed, harsh and humorless. You think a piece of paper from a lawyer I owned means anything? You think geography separates what is mine? He reached out, not touching me, but tracing the air where a tear tracked through rain. You're a fool if you believe that. Vass will pay the price of your foolishness. But first, you'll be removed from his reach. The car climbed toward the cliffs where old money lived, where houses were fortresses behind iron gates. I knew where we were going. The memories assaulted me. The winding drive, the security cameras, the mansion he called home. Our home, for one brief, gilded, terrifying year. I'm not going back there. You are, he said, leaning back. You and the boy. You'll stay under my roof, for your protection. I don't need your protection. He looked at me, and the ghost of our past flickered. You've always needed my protection. You were just too stubborn to admit it. Now you have no choice. You've given me one. The car passed through towering iron gates. There, illuminated by landscape lighting, was the house. Monstrously beautiful, a monument to his power and isolation. My heart beat frantically. Leo. I had to get to Leo. Please, Nicholas, please don't do this. He didn't answer. The car stopped. A man in a dark suit opened my door. Nicholas stepped out, straightening his coat. He came around, his figure looming. He extended a hand. Welcome home, Ilara. I didn't take his hand. I pushed myself out, my shoes sinking into immaculate gravel. The mansion was a brutal contrast to my dim apartment hallway. The limestone facade, soaring columns, manicured hedges. A world preserved in amber. A life I'd fled. Nicholas turned and walked toward the colossal oak doors, which swung open. I had no choice but to follow. My wet shoes squeaked on polished marble. The air inside was warm, scented with beeswax and sandalwood. I stood dripping onto a rug that probably cost more than my life's earnings. A woman in an elegant black dress appeared. Maria. The housekeeper, silver-haired, eyes kind but watchful. I remembered her. Prepare the suite adjoining mine, Nicholas said clinically. The one with the eastern view, and the nursery next to it. Bring dry clothes for Miss Ilara, and warm milk. Where is my son? My voice was steadier than I felt. I need to get him. He's already here, Nicholas said, not looking at me. My men collected him an hour ago. He's upstairs asleep. The old woman was compensated. Vertigo hit so hard I staggered. He took him. While I was paralyzed in the car, his men took my son from his bed. The violation rooted me to the spot. My Leo, in this mausoleum, surrounded by armed men. You had no right. You kidnapped him. He turned to face me fully. In the bright light, I saw exhaustion lining his eyes. I secured him, he corrected, lethally calm. Vass knows where you live. By now, he knows you were taken. What do you think his next move would be? He'd have used the boy as leverage before sunrise. I removed that option. He stepped toward me. The only crime here was yours. 5 years of silence. He was right about Voss. The thought of Leo in that man's clutches made my stomach heave. But this was still a cage. I want to see him. You will. After you're dry and no longer tracking pneumonia through my house. Maria approached with a thick blanket. Come, Signorina. The little one is sleeping peacefully. He asked for his mother, but we told him you were on the way. He's a brave boy. Her kindness was the final straw. A sob pushed up my throat. I choked it back. I let her wrap the blanket around my shoulders and followed her up the sweeping staircase, feeling Nicholas's gaze burning into my back. The suite was an apartment. Sitting room with a fireplace already dancing with flames. A bedroom with a canopied bed larger than my kitchen. A bathroom of marble and chrome. On the bed lay a silk dress and a cashmere wrap. His clothes for me. The message was clear. Maria led me to a smaller door. The nursery was done in rich blues and creams. Oak bed, bookshelves filled with books and new toys, and a large stuffed bear. And in the bed, beneath downy blankets, was Leo. His chest rose and fell in deep, untroubled sleep. One hand curled near his cheek. He looked small and perfectly safe. The tightest knot of fear in my chest uncoiled. I stumbled to his bedside, falling to my knees, pressing a trembling kiss to his temple. He smelled of sleep and unfamiliar soap. He didn't stir. He ate pasta, Maria whispered. He was scared, but Matteo showed him a video game. He seemed happy when he slept. I nodded, unable to speak, stroking Leo's hair. The same jet black as his father's. The resemblance was breathtaking and terrifying. There was no denying it, no hiding. Mr. Volkov is waiting for you in the library. Volkov. The name I shed like a skin. The name I promised Leo would never carry. I was drowning in it again. Maria left. I stayed on the floor beside my son, listening to him breathe. The fire from the next room cast warm, flickering light. It was the most beautiful prison imaginable. And as I knelt there, warmth finally seeping into my frozen limbs, a terrifying thought whispered, for the first time in 5 desperate years, I didn't have to worry about rent, about Voss's men, about Leo's next asthma attack. The relief was the most shameful feeling of all. I must have dozed. I woke with a stiff neck, disoriented. Leo is still asleep. The clock read 2:17 a.m. The house was silent but watchful. I found a cotton robe and wrapped myself in it. I needed water. I needed to think. The library. I knew where it was. Memory guided me past closed doors to the double oak doors at the end of the hall. A sliver of golden light spilt beneath them. I pushed the door open. 2 stories of leather-bound books in shadow. Fire crackling in a massive hearth. A single green lamp on a mahogany desk. Nicholas sat in a wing-back chair facing the fire, a crystal tumbler in hand. He'd changed into dark trousers and a black sweater. He looked less like a corporate titan and more like what he truly was, a warrior in a ceasefire. He didn't turn. Couldn't sleep. I needed water. There's a carafe on the sideboard. I poured a glass, the ice clinking softly. I drank greedily. The silence stretched, filled only by burning logs. He looks like you. The words escaped before I could stop them. He turned his head. Firelight sculpted his face in gold and shadow. His eyes found mine. Does he? The hair, the eyes, the stubborn jaw when he's concentrating. He has my mother's smile, though. He looked back into the fire, swirling his scotch. You should have told me. Old anger flared. Told you? When? When were you having me followed? When you disappeared for days, smelling of gunpowder and other women's perfume? Or after the divorce, when your lawyer made it clear any contact would be considered a threat? My voice quivered. You built the walls, Nicholas. You locked me out. I just walked away. Silence. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of polish. The perfume was a tactic, a business meeting, nothing more. The following was for your protection. You never understood the world you married into. I understood enough to know I couldn't raise a child in it. I understood enough to be afraid every time you walked out the door. I didn't want that life for him. I wanted him safe. Ordinary.
And look how well that turned out, he said, cold irony lashing. Hiding in a slum, indebted to a 2-bit loan shark, 1 hospital bill from ruin. Is that your definition of safe?
The truth corroded my anger, leaving bitter dregs of failure. I wrapped my arms around myself. I did my best. Another thick silence. He rose with predatory grace, moving to the fireplace, leaning on the mantel, staring into flames. His profile is stark and remote. My father was a monster, he said so quietly I almost didn't hear. I froze. He'd never spoken of his family. Ever. He believed sentiment was weakness. Love was a liability. He drove my mother to an early grave with cruelty. I swore I'd be different, that my family would be protected, cherished. A bitter laugh. But I became what I hated. Distant, cold, consumed by shadows. He looked at me, raw, unguarded pain in his eyes. I drove you away. The one thing I wanted to protect more than anything, I destroyed with the methods I used to protect it. The confession dangled between us, immense and fragile. This wasn't the Nicholas I remembered. That man would have cut out his tongue before admitting failure. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand, he said, pushing off the mantle. What I did tonight wasn't just possession or punishment. It's a correction, a chance to do it right. This house can be a fortress, yes, but it can also be a home, for him, for you, if you let it. The promise was a siren song, a beautiful, dangerous illusion. The girl who fell in love with a powerful, dangerous man stirred inside me. But the mother who'd survived 5 years alone screamed a warning. This is how cages are gilded. And what about Kieran Vass? The vulnerability vanished, shuttered behind cold, lethal purpose. Vass is an insect who presumed to feed on what's mine. He'll be dealt with. You won't think of him again. A man's life dismissed in a sentence. A violent reminder of the world I was in. The world I'd brought Leo into. I can't just forget Nicholas. I can't become that woman again. The one who waits in the gilded cage, jumping at shadows, wondering what price her safety costs in blood. He studied me, then gave a slow nod. Then don't be that woman. Be the woman who rules the cage alongside me. The woman whose safety is the foundation, not the decoration. He set his glass down. It's late. You should sleep. Tomorrow we begin. He walked past me, heading for the door. Sandalwood and scotch wrapped around me. At the doorway, he paused without turning. For what it's worth, Alara, walking away from you was the greatest failure of my life. I won't fail again. He left, closing the door softly. I stood alone in flickering silence, the taste of impossible promises on my tongue. The fortress walls had closed around me, but for the first time I glimpsed not just a jailer, but a man standing inside them with me, just as trapped, just as longing for a way out. The following days passed in surreal suspension. Leo adapted with terrifying resilience. After initial shyness, he was fascinated by the house. The hidden passages Maria showed him, the vast kitchens where Chef Gio gave him dough to play with, the sprawling grounds that became his kingdom. He asked about Nicholas only once. Is that man my daddy? Second morning, mouthful of pancake. My heart stopped. What makes you ask that? He shrugged, heartbreakingly familiar. He looks like me, and he said I'm safe here. I chose my words like crossing a minefield. He's someone who wants to keep us safe. That's all you need to know right now. The lie tasted like cinders. Nicholas was a ghost in his own home. I sensed him more than saw him. The echo of his voice during phone calls in low tense Russian. The lingering sandalwood in a just vacated room. The subtle shift in guards' postures signaling his approach. He gave us space to acclimate, strategic patience that unnerved me more than confrontation. On the third day, the domestic intimacy began. Late afternoon in the kitchen, helping Leo with a puzzle at the massive farmhouse table, Nicholas appeared in the doorway. He'd discarded his jacket and tie, his white shirt sleeves rolled to reveal powerful corded forearms. The sight shocked me. "Gio has the night off," he stated. "I'm making dinner." So utterly domestic, so bizarrely normal, I could only stare. Leo looked up, eyes wide. "You can cook?" A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his mouth. Devastating. "I can make one thing very well. Cacio e pepe. My grandmother's recipe. The only thing she taught me before she died." He looked at me. "I require an assistant for the pepper." An order wrapped in an invitation. A test. Leo nodded eagerly. "Can we, Mom? Please?" I nodded, feeling unmoored. "All right." The kitchen transformed. Nicholas moved with focused, economical grace, gathering ingredients. Pecorino Romano, Parmigiano, spaghetti, and a bowl of cracked black peppercorns. He placed a heavy marble mortar and pestle before me. "You'll grind this until it's a mix of fine powder and small pieces. The variance in texture is important." He filled a pot with water, salted it generously, and set it on the stove. The simple act of him lighting the gas burner felt more intimate than any kiss we'd shared. I began grinding. The rhythmic crushing sound filled the quiet. The spicy, pungent aroma rose. Leo climbed onto a stool, mesmerized. Nicholas toasted the pepper in a large skillet, releasing a deeper, warmer fragrance. "Why did your grandmother teach you this?" He didn't look up. "She said every man should know how to make one perfect thing. Something that requires attention. Something that can't be rushed." He added pasta water to the pan, creating a hiss of steam. "She said it would teach me patience and the value of simplicity." I thought of the complex, brutal world he commanded, so far from simplicity. Did it? He met my eyes over the steam. "It taught me that some things are worth the precise effort, that the right ingredients, treated with respect, can create something sustaining." The double meaning hung dense. I looked away, focusing on pepper. "My arm is aching. Let me," he said quietly. His hand covered mine on the pestle. His skin was warm, fingers calloused in places no CEOs should be. The shock of touch was electric, traveling up my arm and settling hot and heavy in my stomach. He guided my hand, showing rhythm. Strong, consistent circular presses. Sandalwood mixed with toasted pepper is intoxicating and dangerous. Leo chattered about the bear in his room, which he'd named Mr. Grumbles. Nicholas responded with a seriousness that stole my breath, asking what Mr. Grumbles thought of the books and whether he preferred a blue or green blanket. The water boiled. Nicholas added spaghetti and set a timer. He took the pestle, fingers caressing mine again, and finished grinding. The muscles in his forearm flexed. I was paralyzed watching him. When the pasta was al dente, he worked with swift, confident elegance. Transferred it to the peppery pan, added starchy water, began adding grated cheese, tossing and stirring until a creamy, silky sauce emulsified, cloaking each strand. Simple alchemy performed like a sacrament. He plated 3 portions in warm bowls, grating the final cheese over each one. He served Leo first, then me, then himself. We ate at the kitchen table, the grand dining room forgotten. The first bite was a revelation. Sharp, floral pepper, deeply savory cheese, pasta perfectly tender. It was the best thing I'd tasted in years. Leo declared it better than dinosaur chicken nuggets. The highest possible praise. Nicholas smiled. Not the controlled, distant curve of his mouth, but a real smile. Unarmored, human. It transformed his face, made him look younger, approachable. My heart did something complicated and painful inside my chest. After dinner, Leo grew drowsy. I started to clear the table, but Nicholas stopped me, his hand closing gently around my wrist. "Leave it," he said. "I'll do it later." He lifted Leo into his arms. Leo curled against him instinctively, trusting, his head fitting perfectly into the hollow of Nicholas's shoulder. The sight was a physical ache, a vision of a life stolen from us both. "I'll take him up," Nicholas said. I followed. In the nursery, he laid Leo down with surprising gentleness, pulling the covers up to his chin. He stood there for a moment, watching the sleeping boy, expression unreadable in the dim light. Then carefully, as if touching something sacred, he brushed a lock of dark hair from Leo's forehead. That simple gesture undid me. A sob lodged in my throat. I turned and fled. I collapsed into an armchair by the cold fireplace, trembling. He found me minutes later. Didn't turn on the light, just stood in the doorway, a silhouette. "He's a good boy," he said quietly. "He is," I whispered into the dark. "You did that." He stepped closer. "Despite everything, you did that." I shook my head, tears spilling. "I was just trying to keep him safe." "I know." Closer still. I could feel his warmth. "Smell dinner. Sandalwood. The man who followed you during our marriage," he said softly. "His name was Alexei. He was my most trusted man." I looked up, confused. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he died last year," Nicholas said, his voice flat, stripped of all inflection. "Protecting my second wife. A marriage of alliance. Isabella was targeted. Alexei took 3 bullets meant for her. She took a 4th later that week. She didn't survive." The air vanished from the room. I stared at him, his face half swallowed by shadow. I'd heard rumors, a tragic accident. I'd never known the truth. My obsession with building an impregnable fortress killed a good man, he continued, and a woman who deserved none of it. It gave me nothing, only ghosts in these hallways. He looked at me then. His eyes were oceans of torment. "When my man told me he'd found you, that you had a son, what I felt wasn't just possession." His voice broke, just barely. "It was absolution, a chance to protect something that matters, not an alliance, not a business asset. My family," he swallowed. "However you choose to define it, however much you'll allow me to be part of it." He was laid bare, this lethal, powerful man, shattered by his failures and clinging to the hope we represented. The gilded cage suddenly had 2 occupants, both prisoners of the past, both staring at a possible, terrifying, beautiful future through the same bars. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and left me alone in the dark, with the taste of pepper and cheese and forgiveness on my tongue, and the echoing confession of shared painful history settling around my shoulders like a heavy, familiar cloak. A week after our arrival, the outside world shattered the illusion. Gray, drizzly afternoon. I was in the conservatory trying to read, while Leo built a fortress out of blocks. Maria entered, her usual composure fractured, with a delicate quiver in her hands. She carried a manila envelope. "Signorina, this was just delivered for you by courier." The envelope had no postage, no address, just my name in neat block letters. Icy fear slid down my spine. Nicholas was in the city at meetings. He'd left behind heightened security. "Who gave this to you?" A young man on a motorcycle. Handed it to Carlo at the gate, said personal delivery, and sped off. Maria's eyes were wide with fear. "Take Leo to the kitchen, please. Ask Gio for biscotti." Maria didn't argue. She coaxed Leo away. When they were gone, the sun-drenched room felt cavernous and cold. I picked up the envelope. Too light. Using a letter opener, I slit the top, upended it. A single photograph slid out face down. My breath is loud in silence. I flipped it over. Leo. Taken yesterday. In the back garden, chasing a butterfly, head thrown back in laughter. Framed perfectly between 2 tall hedges, the mansion was a blur behind. The angle wasn't from the house. It was from beyond the perimeter wall, scrawled across the bottom in thick red marker. A cute kid. The world contracted to a pinprick of terror. The iron-like taste of blood filled my mouth. I'd bitten my cheek. The photograph quivered in my hand. They were here. They saw him. Close enough to capture his joy, to turn it into a threat. This wasn't Kieran Vass. This was too clean, too pointed. This was someone who knew exactly what would cause Nicholas the most pain. I was moving before I could think, photograph crumpling in my fist. I ran to the intercom panel, pressed the button for Victor, head of security, a man whose face was all scars and cold eyes. My quarters, now. My voice is a stranger's, flat, commanding. He was there in under a minute, with 2 other men flanking him. I thrust the crumpled photo at him. He smoothed it out, expression unchanging, but deadly stillness settled over him. The scar on his cheek whitened. When? Yesterday afternoon. The gardens. The angle is from the south wall near the old oak. He nodded, already pulling out his phone, barking orders in rapid Russian. He turned to me. You and the boy will be moved to the safe room. Now. I want to call Nicholas. He's already being informed. Safe room. Now. The house erupted into silent, efficient frenzy. Within 2 minutes, Leo was brought to me, confused, clutching Mr. Grumbles. We were escorted not upstairs, but down, through a hidden door behind a bookcase in the library, into a concrete-lined staircase. The safe room was a stark, modern space with monitors showing every camera angle, a stocked kitchenette, and bunk beds. It felt like a tomb. Leo was scared. He picked up on my tension, the grim faces. Mommy? Are we playing hide-and-seek? Yes, sweetheart, a dire game. I pulled him onto my lap on the stiff sofa, lying. The monitors showed teams fanning out across the grounds, dogs brought to the south wall. I saw Victor pointing, wearing a mask of fury. They found something. A discarded cigarette butt, a footprint, evidence of violation. An hour later, the heavy door opened with a soft hiss. Nicholas filled the doorway. Still in his meeting suit, tie gone, hair disheveled. His eyes were pure, unadulterated fury, a volatile storm barely contained. But when they landed on Leo and me, the fury banked, replaced by scorching intensity. He crossed in 3 strides, crouching before us. He didn't touch me. His gaze went to Leo. Are you all right, Solnishko? His voice was soft, using the Russian endearment for little son. Leo nodded, burrowing into my side. I don't like this game. The game is over, Nicholas said, tone leaving no room for argument. You were both courageous. He looked at me, the question in his eyes more terrifying than his anger. Are you hurt? I shook my head minutely. He reached out, carefully extracting the crumpled photograph from my still clenched fist. He looked at it, at the red scrawl. A muscle in his jaw pulsed once, twice. The air chilled by several degrees. Victor. Victor appeared at his shoulder. The perimeter was breached, a professional. No traces beyond what we found. They were sending a message. They sent it, Nicholas said, voice deathly quiet. He stood, looking down at the photo. The Albanians. This is Bakim's signature, the red marker, the psychological play. He looked at me. Kieran Vass is a dead man. He sold your information to settle his debt to them. He gave them the key to me. A death sentence, delivered with freezing casualness. What are you going to do? He finally met my eyes. The vulnerability from the library was gone, burned away in the furnace of rage. What remained was pure, ruthless purpose. What I should have done the moment I found you. I'm going to end this. Permanently. He turned to Victor. Triple the detail here. They don't leave this room until I return. Understood? Yes, Pecan. Nicholas knelt again, placing a large, steady hand on Leo's head. Stay with your mother. Listen to Victor. I'll be back soon. He rose. In that moment, he was no longer the man who made pasta or confessed failures. He was the Volkov, the boss, a sovereign of violence. He strode toward the door. An instinct older than fear gripped me. Nicholas. He stopped, one hand on the doorframe, didn't turn. Come back, you have to come back. He glanced over his shoulder, gray eyes meeting mine. In their depths, I saw the promise, not spoken, but etched in the grim set of his mouth. For you. For him. I will burn the world down, and walk back through the ashes. Then he was gone. The door sealed with a definitive thunk. The monitors showed his black SUV, a convoy of 2 others, tearing down the driveway, gates swinging open to swallow them into gray dusk. I held Leo close, rocking him, my eyes fixed on the monitors showing the empty, rain-slicked driveway. The gilded cage had just been attacked, and the keeper had gone out not to repair the bars, but to hunt. Time in the safe room lost all meaning, measured in Leo's breathing as he finally fell asleep on the bunk, in the shifting of guards every 4 hours, in faint tinny chatter from Victor's earpiece. The monitors showed a quiet, hyper-vigilant estate. Rain had stopped, leaving the world glistening and cold under security lights. I couldn't eat, couldn't read. I sat in a hard chair before the bank of screens, gaze tethered to the main gate. Every swish of Leo in sleep, every muted cough from a guard, sent adrenaline jolting through me. The photograph was burned onto my eyelids. A cute kid. The words weren't just a threat. They were violating. A fingernail dragged across the soul of my motherhood. And Nicholas was out there in the dark, meeting that violation with force I could only imagine. Just before dawn, static on Victor's earpiece crackled. He stiffened, turned away, listening. His responses were monosyllabic. Da. Ponymat. Yes. Understood. He turned back. He's returning. The situation is contained. Contained. What a clean, bloodless word for whatever hell had been unleashed. 15 minutes later, headlights speared through pre-dawn gloom on the monitors. The convoy returned, moving more slowly now, with a heavy, solemn pace. The lead car bore a long, fresh scrape along its flank. My heart was a caged creature. The cars stopped at the front entrance. Nicholas emerged from the back of the first SUV, still in suit trousers and a white shirt, but the shirt was no longer pristine. Dark spattered stains that weren't mud. In harsh security light, his face was a mask of grim exhaustion, carved from pale stone. He paused, looking up at the house as if seeing it for the first time, then walked inside, his movements heavy and deliberate. "You can go up now," Victor said in a low voice. "It's secure." I gathered sleeping Leo into my arms, his dead weight a comforting anchor. We ascended the concrete stairs, through the bookcase, back into the library. The fire had died to embers. The house was silent, but a different silence now. The quiet after a storm, littered with unseen wreckage. Nicholas wasn't there. Maria met me in the hallway, face furrowed with concern. "He's in his room, Signorina. He asked for you, when you were ready." I put Leo to bed in his nursery, kissing his warm forehead, fingers lingering on his cheek, reassuring myself of his safety, his wholeness. Then I stood outside the door to Nicholas's private suite. I hadn't entered since I left 5 years ago. I raised my hand and knocked softly. "Enter." His voice was rough, abraded. I pushed the door open. His rooms were dark woods, deep colors, a breathtaking view of the city, tinged with the first gray light of morning. He stood at the window, back to me, shoulders set in profound weariness. He'd removed the stained shirt. It lay in a discarded heap on the floor, a dark, accusing shape. His torso was bare, a landscape of powerful muscle and old pale scars I remembered tracing in a different life. The sight was intimately familiar and shockingly new. He didn't turn. "Is he asleep?" "Yes." "Good." A long pause. The city below began to wake, lights winking out one by one. "Vass won't bother you again. The Albanians understand the new parameters." I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. The reality of what was contained and the parameters meant sat between us, a bloodied, invisible beast. But a more pressing truth compelled me forward. "You're back." A fresh, angry gash about 4 inches long cut across his shoulder blade and was hastily cleaned but not appropriately dressed. The edges are ragged, oozing faint blood. Not a bullet graze, the work of a knife or shrapnel. He finally turned. In the dawn light, he looked ancient and young all at once. The fury was gone, replaced by hollowed-out emptiness, a smear of something dark on his jaw. Without thinking, I walked to the adjoining bathroom, wet a clean cloth with warm water, and returned. "Sit." He obeyed, lowering himself onto the edge of a velvet ottoman. I stood behind him. The proximity is overwhelming. Heat radiated from his skin. The scent of him mingled with the night air, sweat, the faint acrid smell of smoke, and something else I refused to name. I dabbed gently at the cut. He flinched, muscles rippling, but didn't make a sound. I found a first aid kit. As I cleaned the wound properly, applied antiseptic, and placed sterile strips to pull edges together, my hands were steady. This I knew. This was my domain, the patchwork repair of broken things. The silence wasn't empty now. It was thick with implicit words, with memory of his confession, with terror of the photograph, with the violent reality of his return. "Why did you go yourself? You have men for that." "Because it was my family that was threatened," he said, head bowed. "My failure that allowed it. The debt was mine to collect. The message had to be written in my hand." I understood. In his brutal world, this wasn't just business. It was atonement. A barbaric, necessary sacrament. My fingers, of their own volition, trailed away from the bandage, skimming over the familiar geography of an old scar on his lower back. A bullet wound from long ago. He shuddered under the touch. "Ilara, my name is a groan, a plea." I came around to stand before him. I took the cloth and gently wiped the smear from his jaw. It came away rust brown. He caught my wrist with a firm but not painful grip. His eyes, haunted and fierce, searched mine. "Tell me you hate me," he whispered hoarsely. "Tell me this." He motioned indistinctly to himself, to the room, to the world of violence he'd just re-entered on our behalf. "Disgusts you. Tell me I'm a monster, and that you'll take our son and run the second you can." His words were a test, a form of self-flagellation. He wanted the punishment to match the crime. I looked at him. At the blood on my cloth, at the fresh bandage on his back, at the devastating weariness and unwavering intensity in his eyes. I thought of the photograph. I thought of Leo's laughter. I thought of the man who ground pepper with infinite patience, who called our son little son. "I can't," I whispered, the truth breaking free. "Because when I saw that picture, I didn't wish for a policeman, Nicholas. I wished for you. I wished for the monster who would tear apart anyone who looked at him wrong. And that terrifies me more than anything." The admission rested between us, horrifying and honest. I'd acknowledged the dark pact. For my son's safety, I'd accepted the devil. And in doing so, I'd recognized the devil wasn't a stranger. He was the man whose skin I was touching, whose pain I just tended, whose heart, for all its brutal chambers, beat for us. A shudder ran through him. He pulled me down, not onto his lap, but to my knees before him. We were eye to eye, level. He framed my face with his hands, thumbs brushing away tears I didn't know were falling. His touch was desperate, reverent. "Then let me be your monster," he breathed, his forehead resting against mine. "Let me be the nightmare that guards your dreams. Let me be the shadow that keeps you in the light." His voice fractured. "I'll spend every breath of my life ensuring that the only fear you or he ever feel is the fear of how much I love you. It is a terrifying thing, my love. I know this, but it's yours. It has always been yours." He didn't kiss me. This wasn't about desire. It was a vow, spoken in the gray dawn, over the ashes of his violence and the rubble of my resistance. A surrender and a claiming, for both of us. Outside, the sun finally crested the horizon, washing the room in streaks of gold and rose. It illuminated the tear tracks on my face, the hard set of his mouth, the stark white of the fresh bandage on his shoulder. The storm had passed. The cage was damaged, but we were both still inside it, huddled together now. No longer just prisoner and jailer, but allies, In a dangerous chosen piece, 2 weeks later an invitation arrived. Thick cream cardstock, swirling engraved calligraphy. The annual Metropolitan Charity Gala, the most exclusive event of the season. Addressed to Mr. Nicholas Volkov and guest. He slid it across the breakfast table. We're attending. Not a question. I looked up from my coffee. I have nothing to wear. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. That is easily remedied. The next afternoon, a renowned stylist named Cosima descended upon the apartment with her assistants. Classic, she declared, circling me. Dramatic, but not fussy. We'll make her a ghost. In diamonds and silk, dress after dress appeared, all of them wrong. Then, the final garment bag. Cosima unzipped it slowly, with deliberate ceremony. The dress was the color of a midnight sky, just before it turns utterly black. A deep, fathomless navy that seemed to drink in the light. Heavy silk, severe lines, almost architectural in its simplicity. High neckline, long sleeves, a straight column falling to the floor. But when I touched it, I understood. Thousands of tiny hand-sewn black crystals were scattered across the fabric like distant stars, visible only when the light struck, at just the right angle. Modest and breathtaking, powerful and fragile. Armor and confession, woven into one. This is the one, Nicholas said. I hadn't heard him arrive. He leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, his gaze dark as it moved, from the dress to me. The night of the gala, I was transformed. The dress fit as if it had been poured onto my body. My hair swept into an elegant, deceptively simple knot at the nape of my neck. Makeup framed my eyes, making them look larger. Older, knowing. The only jewelry, diamond studs so brilliant, they looked like frozen tears. I stared at my reflection. I didn't see a nurse from the 5th floor. I saw the woman who could have been Nicholas Volkov's queen. The realization was chilling and exhilarating. I descended the grand staircase. He waited at the bottom, a study in monochrome power, in a bespoke black tuxedo. His gaze traveled the length of me, slow and possessive, filled with a heat that made the crystals on my dress feel suddenly warm. He didn't offer a compliment. He didn't need to. The sharp intake of breath, the way his eyes lingered at the column of my throat, said everything. You are a vision, he said, his voice rough. He offered his arm. Shall we? The gala was at the Museum of Modern Art, a canopy of lights, a red carpet swarming with photographers, a glittering hive of the city's elite. As we stepped from the car, flashbulbs erupted. Nicholas didn't smile. He placed a firm, guiding hand at the small of my back, a touch that spoke fluently of possession, to anyone who knew how to read it. We were a spectacle. The reclusive feared Nicholas Volkov, with a woman no one recognized. The whispers rolled through the crowd, like a tangible wave. Inside, the cavernous space churned with champagne flutes, designer gowns, and the low, constant hum of orchestrated wealth. I felt every stare like a physical touch. Faces from society pages, from Forbes covers, all of them watching us. Nicholas moved through the crowd with the effortless grace of a shark. Men nodded, respect braided tightly with fear. Women's eyes clung to him with open curiosity, before flicking to me, their assessments sharp and undisguised. He introduced me to no one. The message was unmistakable. She is with me. That is all you need to know. We were nearing the bar, when the atmosphere shifted. The crowd parted. A man stepped into our path, handsome in a sharp vulpine way. Ice blonde hair, eyes the color of a glacier. Dmitry Orlov, Nicholas's most dangerous rival, the architect of a cold financial war that had raged for years, and the man I had, in desperation, approached just 3 weeks earlier, using a false name, begging for a low-level data entry job as a last futile attempt to escape Vass's debt. Our eyes met. Surprise, then cold, calculating recognition. A smirk curved Orlov's mouth. He knew. He knew exactly who I was. The desperate woman who had come to him for help, and now I was on Nicholas Volkov's arm. Nicholas, Orlov said smoothly, his voice a velvety baritone edged with an accent. A rare appearance. And you've brought a guest. His gaze slid to me. A new acquisition? She looks familiar. Have we met, my dear? Nicholas's hand at my back didn't tighten, but his entire body went still, a predator coiling. I could feel the lethal energy radiating from him. I lifted my chin, met Orlov's gaze squarely. The steel spine I'd forged, in loneliness and fear, held me upright. I don't believe so. Orlov's smirk deepened. "Are you sure?" he murmured. "I have an excellent memory for beautiful faces, particularly those in need of employment." The insult was delivered with surgeon's precision. He'd publicly implied I was a hired companion and privately reminded me of my desperation. Hot flush of humiliation crept up my neck. The glittering crowd around us had gone quiet, eavesdropping shamelessly. Before I could formulate a response, Nicholas moved. Just a slight shift, but it placed him entirely between Orlov and me. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. In the sudden silence, every syllable was a hammer strike. "You're mistaken, Dmitri. This is not my guest." He paused, letting the correction hang. He turned his head slightly, his storm-gray eyes finding mine, holding them with possessive, blazing intensity that stole breath from my lungs and noise from the room. Then he looked back at Orlov and delivered the blow. "This is Alara Volkov, my wife." The air was sucked from the space. A collective silent gasp rippled through onlookers. Wife. The word was a detonation. It was a claim more absolute than any girlfriend or mistress could ever be. It was a legal, historical, irrevocable bond. And he'd just reinstated it in front of his entire world. Orlov's smirk vanished, replaced by stunned, then furious calculation. He'd been checkmated, publicly and utterly. Nicholas didn't wait for a reply. His hand slid from my back to cup my elbow, touch now openly, defiantly intimate. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I need a drink." He led me away, leaving a wake of stunned silence and explosive gossip. My head was spinning, heart a frantic drum pressed to my chest. My wife. The words echoed, a vow and a sentence. We reached the relative quiet of a balcony overlooking the sculpture garden. Cool night air was a shock. He turned me to face him, hands on my shoulders. "I'm sorry. I should have warned you. But I won't have anyone, least of all him, look at you with anything less than absolute respect. That was the fastest way to ensure it." I looked up at him, at the man who just declared a war and a marriage in one breath. The fear was there, a constant companion. Yet underneath it, something else was blooming. Something fierce and proud and terrifyingly possessive of my own. He claimed me publicly, and in doing so, he didn't make me a pawn. He made me a queen on the board. "You could have asked." His thumbs stroked the silk covering my shoulders. "Would you have said yes?" In the reflected glow of the city, surrounded by the distant murmur of a world that now knew my name, I gave him the only honest answer. "I don't know." A slow, genuine smile, tinged with relief and triumph, transformed his face. "Good. Then I'll have to keep convincing you." He leaned in, his lips brushing my forehead, a kiss of breathtaking tenderness amid the calculated brutality of the evening. "Come, Mrs. Volkov, let's go home. Our son is waiting." And with that new, staggering title settling around me, like the second skin of my star-dusted dress, I let him lead me back into the light. The public claim at the Gala changed everything. The world now knew I was Alara Volkov. Again, the press followed with speculative, faintly fearful articles about the reclusive tycoon and his reunited family. But within our walls, the shift was far more profound. Leo began tentatively. To call Nicholas Papa. The first time he said it, over a pancake breakfast, the world stopped. Nicholas looked at our son with an expression so raw, so utterly unguarded, that I had to look away to contain the storm rising in my own chest. He reached out, covered Leo's small hand with his own, and gave a single solemn nod. It was a coronation. The gilded cage was still a cage. But the door stood open, and I found I no longer wished to flee. I walked its halls with new authority. The staff's deference deepened into genuine respect. Maria consulted me on menus, on redecorating Leo's room as he grew. I was, in every sense that mattered, the lady of the house. Nicholas consulted me on matters of business that affected the household, his tone no longer commanding, but collaborative, like a CEO briefing, a trusted partner. The intimacy that began over cacio e pepe deepened into a partnership, forged in crisis, sealed beneath the glittering lights, of a public lie that grew more truthful with every passing day. 6 months later, in that same kitchen, Nicholas taught Leo how to properly grind pepper for the pasta, his large hands guiding our son's small ones with infinite patience. I stood in the doorway watching them, one hand resting over the gentle swell of my belly, where our daughter Sophia grew. Comfort bloomed in my chest. A year after that, in the same nursery, now painted with rockets and dinosaurs, I rocked our newborn daughter, while Nicholas read a story to a drowsy Leo. His voice was low, steady, a sound of safety, of love. The world beyond our walls still turned on threats and rivalries. The shadow of his power would always stretch long and dark, but inside our fortress, we built something luminous. The cage was gone. In its place stood a kingdom, forged in fire and choice, ruled by a monster, who was my guardian, a tyrant, who was my husband, a fearful man, who became the devoted father of my children, and I, the woman with the steel spine, was no longer his prisoner, nor merely his wife. I was his equal, his partner, his home.